This is January 6th, and these are the hostages. Approximately 1,500 for a pardon.
Yes.
Full pardon.
Full pardon or commutation?
Full pardon. We have about 6 commutations in there when we're doing further research.
President Trump putting pen to paper, signing a number of executive orders, including pardoning some 1,500 January 6 defendants. But some of those might not be off the hook just yet.
Yeah, let's explain. Those with secondary charges for failing to show in court could still be exposed to prosecution by the Trump DOJ. Judge Andrew Napolitano is here, senior judicial analyst, to help us understand what happened. Judge, what'd you make of it?
You know, don't feel that you're out in the cold on this, because this caught everybody by surprise. Yeah. The DOJ filed secondary charges against people who failed to show in court. Their bail was confiscated, and they were charged with escaping justice.
Right.
That is not a January 6 charge, and the charge wasn't filed until they failed to show, which in some cases was 2 years later in 2023. So when the DOJ moved before a federal judge to dismiss the J6 charge, it specifically exempted from that application to dismiss the charges for failure to show. As a result, some of these people have been rearrested. One of them was rearrested because of an old gun charge. So not all the J6 people are walking home. Only those who, sounds crazy, pleaded guilty or were convicted. None was acquitted. If you're pleaded guilty or convicted, or you're waiting trial, you're scot-free. Yeah. If you didn't show up, they're going to prosecute you for not showing up, but they will not prosecute you for the original J6 charge.
Unreal.
Wow. Do you think this was intentional by the president? I mean, there was a lot going on,
yeah,
so maybe this was just overlooked.
I honestly think that this escaped the Justice Department.
Yeah.
Those of us who monitor it, I mean, I've been monitoring this for years. I didn't know about this. A lot of us didn't know about it. But yesterday, Damon, our wonderful executive producer, says, "Hey, Judge, what does this mean? I've never seen a document like this." I'm looking like, oh, my God. The DOJ itself is saying, "Judge, we only want the J6 charges removed. We are going to prosecute for the failure to show." That's the Trump DOJ saying that to the same federal judge that had sentenced these people to prison.
Yeah, it gets a little complex and in the weeds, but that makes perfect sense now that you've lined it out again. What could potentially happen to those that remain?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, for failure to show up in a court.
Yeah.
Plus the confiscation of whatever bail they had posted.
We're watching really quickly, too. Just wanted to make sure the viewers know that we were watching it with the black. But again, Trump is heading to North Carolina, California today to visit those devastated areas. But obviously, while this happens, the travel takes place. I wanted to ask you about something that one of the executive orders that Trump signed, the birthright citizenship, challenges the 14th Amendment.
Right.
And it is already temporarily halted. I believe, 14 days, something like that.
Yes.
Can you speak to that?
I think the judge did the right thing, because the birthright citizenship is guaranteed by the Constitution, and the president can't void a section of the Constitution any more than Barack Obama or Joe Biden could have voided the Second Amendment. I mean, think of it.
But you would assume he knew that coming into or one of his advisors would have said.
I assume that his advisors knew it, and they want to start the debate. His issue is people coming here just to give birth. And then they say to the government, okay, my baby, an infant, 2 weeks old, is an American citizen. You're going to kick me out of the country? Who's going to raise the baby? And then the government says, well, okay, you're right. You stay here along with your other children who are not citizens, along with your spouse who's not a citizen. And before you know it, there's a family here receiving food, shelter, clothing, education, and health care, the social safety net that the states are required to provide to all persons. Even though only one of them is a citizen, the infant. That's what Trump wants to put a stop to. You can understand that. He promised he would put a stop to that. But the only constitutional way to put a stop to that is to amend the Constitution by removing that clause for the 14th Amendment. That clause was put in there in order to assure that the former slaves after the Civil War were recognized as persons, because there was a Supreme Court opinion called Dred Scott which said slaves and ex-slaves are not persons, and the 14th Amendment reversed that opinion.
Yeah. Well,
My God, was they really and truly that barbaric back then? That they didn't even look at a two-armed, two-legged, one-headed person as it being a person? How did they look at them people that let they was creatures, animals, something that crawled out of the sea? Did they put them in a category of some sort of animal kingdom? That is unbelievable. But I guess what he just got through saying is true. And they did put that into the amendment to make sure that they was treated as human beings. This is a catch-22 that, as far as I'm concerned, does need to be changed, amended. It does need to be refreshed, because we can see now what they're doing is abusing our Constitution that way. Just like burning of the flag, or being a devil worshiper. Who in God's name would have thought that we would have been inundated by a group of people that wanted to disrespect our Constitution under the Freedom of Speech Act by saying, well, if I want to burn the flag, I can burn the flag. If I want to be disrespectful to the Pledge of Allegiance, I can be disrespectful to the Pledge of Allegiance. If I want to be a devil worshiper and worship Satan, Lucifer, then that's nobody's business but my own. Who would have thought that a society from within, that the cancer would have grown to the extent of what it is today? But it has. But it has. It has got the American laws in knots. I guess that would be the right word of putting it, in knots. Because we've had people that's tried to outsmart the smart. But they've tried to outsmart the smart in a corrupt, evil, demonic, cruel, manipulated way. And to think that the people that's supposed to be the first class people, which are supposed to be the professional people, which are supposed to be the smartest of the people, has sat back and allowed for this to get in the shape that it's in up until now. And now Donald J. Trump has made a conscious choice of trying to change it. And I'm glad that he has. I really am. I'm glad that he has, because, I didn't realize that they was purposely coming over here involving themselves towards doing that. But there was another slick, sly thing that they was doing as far as going out here buying a brand new vehicle and getting a special insurance that you can only get on a brand new vehicle, which is to pay for the remaining amount of money that you owe on the vehicle after you have wrecked the vehicle. And who would have thought that people was getting out here deliberately buying a new vehicle, wrecking it, knowing that they had that type of insurance called a gap insurance, and then making sure that the vehicle was paid for even though it was totaled. But then they turn around and buy the vehicle back for a small amount of money from the insurance companies with a reconstructed title and still be driving a brand new vehicle. You see how that they have tried to undermine our laws and undermine the privileges of our laws? I've never seen nothing like this before. We're under attack. And I've said that all along. America is under attack. And until the American people awaken to this and to see what's really going on, we're going to continue to be hurt And the thing about being hurt, they're not just hurting us. They're hurting our children. They're hurting our children's children. They're hurting our bloodline, going all the way down to the American culture, through the American culture. It's awful. It's absolutely awful.
But we're also talking about birth tourism, where people, you know.
Let's back it up just a little bit where we don't miss it. Right there.
Well, Dred Scott, which said slaves and ex-slaves are not persons, and the 14th Amendment reversed that opinion.
Yeah. But we're also talking about birth tourism, where people, you know, are able to say, you know, I've got only a few months left in the pregnancy. I'm going to plan it so I'm in the United States. My
Correct.
child becomes a U.S. citizen. These aren't necessarily folks who are coming across the border. They could be coming from all over the world. Just very briefly, Judge, how common is birthright citizenship?
Apparently very common, according to the Trump administration. So, this is what will be played out in a Seattle courtroom.
Yeah.
How serious is this problem, Your Honor? Because you know it will take forever to amend the Constitution. I think the government's going to lose. However, goes to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, Trump's least favorite court in San Francisco.
Sure.
From there, it will go to the Supreme Court of the United States. It's not going to be resolved overnight.
Judge Adrian Napolitano weighing in. We do appreciate that, Judge. Always good to see you on Friday.
Pleasure, guys. Have a nice weekend.
Well, as we take a live look there of Trump again traveling to North Carolina on the way, we are learning this Hamas expected to comply with a second round of hostage releases tomorrow. The release is said to be tied to Israel pulling forces out of a key corridor in Gaza. More next.
Man. And to think that all this has been pushed
In
upon,
San Antonio, Texas. I ran my own HVAC business, and now
pushed upon to the backs of the tax-paying people like this.
and that the amount of people they're seeing is just going down drastically.
It's a real fear that is impacting an entire community.
We're a very independent restaurant community, not a chain restaurant. So we could see some of our independent restaurants closing.
With so much uncertain, this woman can only hope to still fulfill her dream.
Vine para acá por algo, vine a luchar.
I came here for something, she says. I came to fight. I came to get ahead, and I haven't done anything. I don't want to feel like a failure.
Local officials here say outreach is absolutely critical, and today the city of Chicago unveiled a Know Your Rights campaign that will be on video displays throughout the Chicago Transit Authority, so that's trains and buses here in the city of Chicago. Whitney Wild, CNN, Chicago.
Donald Trump's controversial pick for Secretary of Defense is just one step away from being confirmed. The full Senate is set to vote on Pete Hegseth's nomination Friday. The former Fox News anchor narrowly cleared a key procedural vote Thursday, with 2 Republicans joining every Senate Democrat in opposition. Hegseth faces a string of accusations, including that he sexually assaulted a woman in 2017. He denies the allegations, but documents newly obtained by CNN show he told the Senate that he paid his accuser $50,000 as part of a confidential settlement. Lauren Fox has more details.
There's little indication.
FBI in a prepared statement that Hegseth continues to have a problem with alcohol abuse. Hegseth's lawyer told NBC News these claims are clearly and obviously false to any objective observer. And a spokesperson for the FBI tells NBC that the Bureau, quote, does not comment on specific background investigations. Let's go right to NBC News senior political reporter.
Man, they're digging and pawing and trying to find every loose end that they can find on that guy.
is a will. Luckily,
In which, maybe rightfully so, I ain't been keeping up with it that much. Maybe they got a right in investigating him like that. I don't know.
And to lead the Defense Department. We also know that Senator Susan Collins, a Republican from the state of Maine, also is opposed to Pete Hegseth. She also cited concerns about the fact that she was not sure that Pete Hegseth had had a legitimate change of heart on the issue of women serving in combat roles. Now, Hegseth had said previously in other writings that he did not believe that women belonged in combat roles, but throughout this process, he had convinced other Republican senators that he had had a change on that issue, and he had said repeatedly during his public confirmation hearing that he believed that women just had to meet the same standards as men for these roles. There's also just a larger question right now of what this means for nominees moving forward.
They get hung up, don't they?
As low as a 2% commission.
They get.
But for the American people,
get
so I'd like to
snagged.
see oil prices come down, and when the energy comes down, that's going to knock out a lot of the inflation. That's going to automatically bring the interest rates down.
Are you worried about you said that you would demand it.
This is my point about the oil prices and about energy and OPEC, the Saudis. This is the part that I don't think a lot of people has never really put a whole lot of thought to. The oil prices we have seen, or I have, at the age of 63, soon to be 64, ever since, I guess, the early 70s, we have seen the oil manufacturers fool and manipulate the people. We have seen them raise prices, drop prices. We have seen them raise prices and use the ideology that it was a shortage of oil. We have seen them go up $1 and come down 50 cents. Go up $1 and come down 50 cents. Go up $1, come down 50 cents. Kind of like a teeter-tottering type deal. They come up $1, everybody complains about it, and then whenever they bring it back down 50 cents, oh, wow, well, that ain't too bad of a deal. Well, we can accept that. Well, yeah, that's a bargain, ain't it? Whenever OPEC, the Saudi Arabian government, done what they done right in the process or on the latter end of COVID, they already knew how badly that the world had taken on a setback. Not just in America, but all over the world. I mean, COVID was a big deal. I mean, it shut down a lot of businesses for temporarily, and it caused a lot of businesses to collapse on account of. I think it was something like 140,000 restaurants that went out of business, and over 70,000+ of them went out of business indefinitely. That's how serious that it was. By and large, I think they wanted to keep the certain factories going, especially those that was associated with food, like Tyson, places like that. But even they went through some bad hiccups pertaining to spreading of diseases and stuff, chicken contamination, other types of contaminations that has had setbacks. But whenever the oil industry went up, right at the latter end of COVID, there was no way for people like Walmart, Kmart, Walgreens, all these other big chain manufacturers, there was really no way for them to adjust to that because the country had already been shut down. People was already living off stimulus checks. And now all of a sudden you're going to raise the oil prices up to $5 and $6, $7. I think out in California was possibly $8 and $9, $10 a gallon almost, and up in upper places of Denver, Colorado, and Aspen and Vail and Queen and Silverthorne and places like that. Aspen. It was just a tremendous hit. I remember whenever the oil prices went up in Obama's ordeal, which I think was around 2012. I remember being out on the highways, basically being a storm chaser, going from catastrophe to catastrophe, because living in a hotel room, basically, that was the only thing that was keeping me alive, was going to these catastrophes, because I knew that that's where the money players was going to be moving moving the money around, regardless whether it was in the auto industry or the home industry or whatever kind of industry, because the insurance companies had to, or was supposed to have made it right with their customers. But I remember driving on the interstates and purposely watching 18-wheelers going either 65 or possibly 60 and even 55 miles an hour on the interstate. That way they could save money by their piece of equipment not using as much fuel. But a lot of those business operators ate that. Even your bigger chains like Walmart and Target and other big retail stores, they ate that. And then the prices come back down, but they didn't come back down where they was. Whenever this man was in power during the COVID pandemic, if I'm not mistaken, prices never got above $2 a gallon. I may be wrong about that, but there was a limit in how far the gas had reached in its top pivotal point, and the economy over here was booming until COVID hit. As Donald Trump was fixing to leave, that's when all hell busted loose pertaining to the oil industry. Gas went up $4, $5, $6 a gallon. But yet no, we still want to buddy up with these people over in Saudi Arabia, and they was the ones that was causing the market to do that. Do y'all have any idea how much money that the Saudi Arabians have, and how many lives that they have destroyed just within the past 30 plus years, since basically our politicians allowed for them to be in control of all that over there? Does anybody have any idea how many billions, possibly trillions of dollars that they have costed the world? Not counting the human casualties that happened during 9/11. Now, I know a lot of people, whenever they hear me, they think, well, this guy, he's off his rocker. He thinks that the oil industries should go to jail because he's blaming the global environmentalists pertaining to the major weather events on them, because of not just the CO2 gases that's going up into the atmosphere, but also because of them constantly draining the oil out of the ground, that the oil was put there for a heat shield of the heat expanding from the core of the center of the earth, which is 10,000 degrees. Now it's expanding to the outside of the earth because there's not the shield there to prevent it from coming and surfacing. I'm telling you, a lot of people know the damages that they was doing to us. But because of the profit margins, they continue to keep doing it. It's the same type of reflection of what happened to the tobacco industry. They knew. Certain doctors and certain special people, scientists or whatever, they knew before World War I that tobacco was a causing agency. They knew that not only was it very addictive, kind of like heroin or kind of like other addictions. Sugar's the number one addiction in America that people's been hooked on. But they knew, but at the same time, they also knew that they'd be fighting against basically a force unknown to mankind if they went up against the tobacco industry. So they, Surgeon Generals, put it on the side of the cigarette pack. It could lead to dangerous health, and later they moved it up to it could lead to cancer causing relations, until they really got to monitoring it and looking at it. And now, if I'm not mistaken, since basically 2000, They don't say it could. Now they say it will. It will cause problems with pregnant women. It will cause cancer. It will be damaging to your health if you get addicted to this product. Just like red dye that I think Biden passed, that they've had suspicions about now for the past 30 years, that the red dye that they're putting in all our foods is a cancer-causing agency. Well, it hasn't been until just within the past month or so that Biden, according to his statistics, they're going to outlaw it, but it's going to take them 2 years to do that because they're going to have to figure out what to use subsidies in between the red dye and now using something else that'll be more efficient and more healthy for the consumer. 2 years. And they've known for 30 under the suspicion of it being harmful. Same thing with your oil prices. Same thing with the oil repercussions. They've known. Not just since 2000, not just since Al Gore brought it to the table, but going all the way back into the 60s and the 70s, whenever Carter was president, that distracting oil from the ground, pumping horrible C2 gases up into the atmosphere was going to be consequential. But they kept doing it anyway. And they kept drilling, and they kept drilling, and they kept building, and they kept becoming more powerfuler and more powerful and more powerfuler, to the point that they basically become that force that nobody wanted to tackle, kind of like the tobacco industry, because if they did, they'd be shot out of the saddle real quick. Well, now we've went through COVID. We lost over 1 million people. We know it come from China, probably over the results towards the civil unrest that was going on in China at that time. Whether or not it actually was deliberately planned or plotted by people in China of the lab, or whether or not it come from North Korea in making it look like that it was China. Either or, we know that the disease, the pandemic, come from China. But to think of all times for the oil industry to play their little game again towards this teeter-tottering, let's go up $1 and we'll come down 50 cents, or let's go up $2 and we'll come down $1, or let's go up even $3, but we'll stabilize it at $1.50 for the customer. They played it right in the process, or right on the latter end of COVID, and because of it, it has turned countries totally upside down. And to think, this is my opinion, ain't gonna cost you nothing, to think that we're still wanting to buddy up with these you-know-what over there, these devils, goes to show you that either we are ignorant or we just don't care in how our people are being taken advantage of. Because right now, we're 30 years behind where we should be. Right now, there should be all kinds of electrical, different forms of manufacturing alternative energies. Right now, there should be all kinds of advancements with technology. Right now, we are in a stalemate. And I'm just not talking about America. I'm talking about the planet in general is in a stalemate because of this invasion that occurred, that shouldn't have occurred, but did, at the White House during the latter part of Ronald Reagan and Mr. Bush's administration, whenever they decided that they was going to talk about peace, but then went to war pretending to Desert Storm and Desert Shield. And then a few years later, they retaliated over in the Middle East. Boom, bam, we got hit by 9/11. Now, if people can't see this and understand these things, it's either because it's over their heads, or it's because that they choose not to want to see these things in admitting guilt. In admitting guilt. Where the core of the origin, going back to the oil over in the Middle East, was even back into the 50s and the 60s, shortly after World War II, whenever our politicians decided that they was going to, well, here, just take it over. There you go. And then what year was it? I was in 93, I think, whenever the Taliban, I think it was the Taliban, it may have been the Jihad, I don't know who it was, they're all, to me, they're all about the same, basically declared war upon Jerusalem and said, whenever we get through with them, we're going after America. In other words, they're confounded, messed up thinking with Allah, and that if you die for Allah, you'll drink all the wine, you'll live with 99 virgins, had become so profound in those people's thinkings over there, in the Middle Easterners over there, not all of them, but I'm looking at it from a big picture here now, that they actually thought and felt like that they was going to be able to rule the world, that they was going to be able to control even the diplomatic democracy type countries above and beyond the way that they control their own country over there, knowing good and well that their country over there is nothing but a stagnated, evil, demonic, communist-controlled dictators over there, oligarchs, that don't even allow for women to unveil themselves and give them any privileges whatsoever, because they see women as a weakness to man, and because it's a weakness to their men, the only way that they know to control the weakness is to hide the women. Put veils over their head, make sure that they're dressed from the top of their heads all the way down to the bottom soles of their feet, if they do get out in public, and never, ever, ever give them any type of position towards being a teacher or an instructor or working for our government. Now, that's what we're dealing with, folks. There's no ifs, ands, maybes, could be's about it. That's what we're dealing with, and we're going to continue to keep dealing with this unless we, the people, especially the Christian people, stand up and say, enough is enough. I've known for quite some time that they was manipulating our Constitution over here under the Freedom of Speech Act towards judges and courts, saying that if they burn a American flag by saying that they hate America in front of a courthouse on the streets, there ain't nothing that our law enforcement officials can do about it. I knew that that in and of itself was freaking crazy, to think that our people that originally drawed up the Constitution had that in mind whenever they was drawing up the Constitution, that they was going to allow for the enemy to come over here and basically make a mockery out of our own government. Well, that's not even reasonable. Why would have our own people, American people, have made confounding laws like that? They didn't. They had no intentions of anybody burning the American flag in front of a courthouse and some judge calling it freedom of speech. Or a football team associated with the NFL to make a stance in doing what they was doing that I think Donald Trump stopped them from doing. that instead of standing for the national anthem and putting their hand over their heart, they actually done other stuff to disrespect that, that heritage about us, that culture about us. Whenever the courts started going after people such as myself in an anti-Semitism type form, knowing good and well that I was supposed to have just as much of a right to preach and teach what I believed in out of the King James as the Muslims did, preaching out of their Muhammad book or some other kind of Quran or some other kind of belief. Whenever we was being attacked here in America because of our Christianity stance, I knew then that this country had been taken over. Just like the flags, just like the Pledge of Allegiance, just like the national anthem. And now we're finding out what they're really being really sneaky about is bringing women over here. And I've known this for quite some time too, that they would purposely bring a pregnant woman over here knowing that she was just at the point of fixing to have a delivery. And then after the child was delivered, well, it's an American child. Okay, well, the child's an American, but you come over here illegally. You and your boyfriend or your husband come over here illegally. So now you get the laws caught into a catch-22 in a knot to where now what do? It has put the American people under our American Constitution in between a hard place and a rock. Damned if you do, damned if you do not. Because of the manipulation coming from all these other countries that some of these judges was allowing to occur by giving them just as much rights or even more rights than what we had. Now, if you really want to study pertaining to the rights of the foreign exchange group coming over here, is the fact that they have had it in our own Constitution to where if you come over here as a foreigner and you decide that you're going to open up a gas station, or you decide you're going to open up a grocery store, or you decide that you're going to do this or do that, you can work under that heading of that particular person's name. I believe it's for either 5 years or 10 years, and never have to pay a dime's worth of American taxes. And what they have been doing for the past 35, 40 plus years, recognizing this law over here pertaining to that incentive, that just about the time that the business itself is fixing to now having to start paying taxes, they'll exchange that business name into somebody else's name of another foreigner that comes over here. That way the business can continue to operate. It don't matter if they're selling groceries, cigarettes, beer. It don't matter what they're doing. And they'll never have to pay a dime's worth of taxes. That is manipulation. Our forefathers did not intend for that to happen, and that is one of the very reasons why to this day we are trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. The oil industry should be punished because of what that they have done, because Exxon, Valdez, Shell, and all of them made more profits during COVID or on the latter end of COVID than what they ever have. I don't forgot now. It was up in the trillions of dollars of profits that they made across the board, and to think that they're still going to the bank sniggering and laughing, and they was the one that caused this, and they're not being held responsible for the damages that they have caused, especially those knotheads over there in Saudi Arabia. That ain't nothing but a bunch of devils to begin with. Because if you get caught over there with a King James Version Bible, you're probably going to go to jail. And if you get caught over there preaching in the streets of the Lord Jesus Christ's name, or it used to be this way, they had the right to execute you. That is a anti-Christ country that we're still dealing with to this day, pertaining to the oil. Pertaining to the oil. So you wonder, how come the people had an uprising on January the 6th? I don't think it was so much of a group of people that felt like that the election had actually been stolen. I'm pretty sure that there was probably a certain amount of people in that group that may have thought that, because Donald Trump had preached that for, 6 weeks, 2 months, up until the actual inauguration day, that the election been stolen, in which so many different states validated their counts again and again and again, of making sure that they counted those counts right. And no, Donald Trump did, that election was not stolen. But my point being is, on the January the 6th deal, that's what they're talking about right here, is that I think that so many hardcore patriots, good sounding American people, had had enough of this. And because of it, it created a movement. And in that movement that was created, things got out of hand, and the next thing you know, a great deal of people wound up being at the wrong place at the wrong time in a big hullabaloo. A tumult. An uprising. Out of those 1,500, whatever, 15 and a half or 1,600 or whatever, approximately, there was certain individuals that I still feel like to this day somebody should have put a little bit of consciousness, thought into why would we want to let this person go, because they was the very persons that started all this. They was the persons that come over there with the bear spray and everything else towards having the intent of starting an insurrection. Or they're the ones that had such of a bad record to begin with of previous crimes that they've been convicted of. And now you're just going to release those people back out into society? Donald Trump is doing the best that he can. I really think that he is, but there are certain factors about all this that I feel like that even Donald Trump hasn't fully thought out regarding how badly that we have been invaded in America. And I'll give this to Mr. Donald Trump. Before Donald Trump come in power during the Obama reign, it had gotten so bad in America that they was actually contemplating on putting people in jail if they had a lascivity scene setting out in their yard or setting out in their church pertaining to Christ, Jesus Christ, Virgin Mary, the Christ child, and 3 wise men. It had gotten that badly, that unproportionately out of hand, pertaining to the Christian, the true Christian society being attacked. Even California, it has come up several times pertaining to their legislation over there of banning the Bible from California. But yet now, whenever an event like has recently happened to California happens, all of a sudden they start crying out, well, we need your help. We need your help. And then whenever we hesitate on giving them the help, well, I thought you was Christians. I thought you was Christians. I thought that was the love of the Christians, was to help their fellow man. But yet now, it was them just a few days before the fires broke out, the major fires in L.A., of people walking around with signs, "Get God out of California." They even had concerts going on a day or two before that people was deliberately mocking God in that same area, in that same town, of making a mockery out of God towards this being a godly forsaken place. The Bible is very clear whenever it talks about the love for each other regarding a Christian love. Because Christ said that even sinners has love for sinners, but what thank do they have regarding one day going to heaven? That even the most wretched, immoral, wicked human being ordinarily is going to have some sort of feelings for their own bloodline regarding their children, their aunts, or uncles, or fathers, or mothers, or by and large are supposed to. But just because you have feelings for them doesn't make you have an agape love or a righteous type love. That's why Christ said what he said, that even sinners love sinners. Even the non-believers has a certain portion of gratitude or compassion towards one another, but not a true agape love. This is the part that a lot of the preachers hadn't been preaching on correctly regarding agape love, regarding the Christianity love. But on the same token, as you are a Christian, this is another manipulation factor that has come into play, is that people think that because you do claim to be a Christian, you're supposed to take whatever that human being or that situation chooses to want to abuse you by, neglect you by, take advantage of you by. Because you're a Christian, you're supposed to stand idly by and just take it. The Bible does say that we are to forgive our enemies. The Bible does say that we're supposed to go beyond just forgiving our enemies, but we're supposed to love our enemies. But because we love our enemies pertaining to their souls does not mean that we love what our enemy has done to us that makes that person, our persons, our enemies. There's a reason why that they fit under the category of being an enemy. Obviously, they must have done something. Or maybe they didn't do something that they should have done that has created this animosity towards putting them in the category of being an enemy. Yes, you love your enemies pertaining to their souls. You don't want to see nobody's soul go to hell. But at the same time, just because you love your enemy, don't mean that you love what your enemy has done. And it for darn sure doesn't mean that you're supposed to just sit back and be abused and taken advantage of because you have a sign on your platel that says, I'm a born-again Christian. And the reason why that I can verify that is because why would have Jesus himself preached the message about these events to the degree that he said, do not throw your pearls before the swine? The pearls representing something good coming from the Christian family. The swine representing something bad pertaining to the wicked family. In other words, once you have identified that these people are only taking advantage of you, that these people are neglecting you, that these people are basically bamboozling you, manipulating you, Christ said, do not throw your pearls before the swine. Just like it says in the Bible that if a person won't work, don't feed them. And I know that sounds harsh in today's society, but I'm telling you, there was guidelines pertaining to the Christianity walk. And once we start ignoring those guidelines, once we start compromising on those guidelines, guess where it gets us? It gets us exactly where we are today towards being $30-something trillion in debt, that even the Bible repeats itself again and again and again by saying that if the blind lead the blind, they both shall leadeth off into the ditch. And that's exactly where not only the American government is right now, but the majority of all nations is right now. Once more, people need to go to the core, the origin, and figure out what has disproportionalized us the way that it has just within the past few years. What has made things so erratically unbalanced? It's because wicked, evil has sifted in. It's because of this evil entity that has blinded or manipulated a great deal of people to the degree that we thought that we were supposed to have done that. We thought that because we're a Christian, we're supposed to put up with this. We thought that because we're a Christian, we're supposed to give even to those that make fun of us and mock God and aren't grateful of what we're doing for them. We've been lied to. We've been deceived. And I've said all along, looking at the book of Revelations, where after the 1,000 years is over with, and after the great white throne judgment is over with, and it says that they will be released for a short season to go and deceive Lucifer, go and deceive the people once more again into Gog and Magog, that will be whenever the great battle of Armageddon happens, and that will be whenever good overcomes evil completely and totally at the end, and they will be consumed, which means the second death. Basically be thrown into a tormented place, because anything separating from God is torment. And Lucifer, the actual Antichrist, being the false prophet, will be thrown into a lake of fire, where basically it will burn and be tortured and tormented from day to night, from night to day, forever and forever and forever. And somebody asked me, said, well, what does forever mean? Well, what is forever? Well, forever to me, putting it in the category of eternity, is that if you had a little dove that could fly all the way to the moon, hypothetically speaking, we know that can't happen literally, but let's just say it could, and this little bird took one grain of sand, transporting sand from the earth, flew all the way to the moon. It took him a year to get there, dropped the piece of sand off, took the little bird a year to come back to the earth, picked up another piece of sand, a grain of sand, a grain of dirt, took it back to the earth, which took another year, took the little bird another year from get to the moon back to the earth. How long would it take for that little bird to transfer every grain of sand on planet Earth and put it on the moon? Now you're getting an understanding of eternity. Now you're getting an understanding of what forever means. Because it would take forever. It would take forever and forever and forever for that little bird to do that, hypothetically speaking, to transfer every grain of sand, every dirt, every rock onto the moon. That's what eternity is.
Are you worried that there's too much going on at once if you're trying to bring interest rates down, get the economy back going?
No, it just works that way. I mean, it's just economically works that way. When the oil comes down, it'll bring down prices, then you won't have inflation, and then the interest rates will come down.
I've said all along, I keep calling the guy Greenspan. I think Greenspan's been retired now for quite some time, pertaining to the money issue, whenever it comes to the cesspool of interest. You have certain institutions that rely upon interest to survive off of. They don't have small bills. They got big, big bills. But in the process of those big, big bills, they also have big, big profits. And in the process of all that, you've got all these people that's making oodles and gobs of money that has already obligated themselves to secondary homes, vacation homes, putting children in colleges. They got a big yacht, this and that. So they got to keep their money flowing to the bigger people that they've made commitments with, and the only way that they can do that is to keep the interest rates coming. Well, whenever the people slack off on paying the validated interests that they've already made commitments to, then they really don't have no other choices but to raise the interest rate up. That way the profit margin stays the same. See, it was even Bill Clinton that had a formula before the bubble burst happened that pertained to the real estate market, that if a bank loaned 10 different people on 10 different mortgages on homes, that even if 2 or possibly 3 failed in the process of all that, they would have enough margin to still stay afloat. They would have enough profit margin to still maintain their banking system. Well, what happens if you have 4 of them to fail? What happens if you have 5 of them to fail? The only way that you can make up the differences is to make up the profit margin pertaining to the money that you've already released. Well, we're going to have to charge more for the money. Instead of getting 4% interest, now we're going to have to get something like 7. Why is that? Because that money flow has to still keep going to the banks, because of all them it's already made their commitments toward vacation homes and yachts and etc. It's a feeding frenzy. It's an ecosystem. And once part of the ecosystem starts dropping or starts falling or starts getting out of balance, the next thing you know, one thing affects something else, and affects something else, and affects something else, to the degree that now everything is affected. That's kind of like them fires out there in California that they claim is over 12,000 structures. I think they said, if I'm not mistaken, 100,000 people was going to be affected. I don't know how many people that they've come up with the analogy towards actually being homeless right now, but you figure 3 per household, 12,000 structures. You do the math on that, that's like 30,000 people, 35, 40,000 people that's going to become homeless instantaneously. People that sees that, by and large, can only see the small picture of it regarding the damages that's been done in a direct area, in a direct form. The thing about those damages that has just happened, now those factories or those farms or those whatever that had other businesses that relied upon them will no longer be able to produce the same stuff that they was producing, towards now giving it or selling it to the people that wasn't affected directly by the fire. So what is that going to do? That's going to affect them too as well. The chain of reaction is going to spread to the degree that it ain't just going to be in one remote area. It's going to spread abroad. And that's the reason why that I've said what I've said again and again and again. And every time something like that happens, it doesn't matter if it's a flood, don't matter if it's a tornado, don't matter if it's a hurricane, don't matter if it's a fire, don't matter if it's an earthquake, don't matter if it's a volcano, don't matter if it's a pandemic. Every time something like that occurs, it's diminishing from the resources. And now everybody has to start scrambling. Well, where are we going to get our fish at? Well, where are we going to get this at? Where are we going to get that at? And the next thing you know, here comes the jabbers. Whoa, this is a time that we can make up for our losses. We can gouge. We can price gouge. We can start charging $20 a bag for a big bag of ice, because now they're all in need of it in this particular area. Well, if you was to go with an ice truck down to some of these areas and start trying to promote ice for $20 a bag, you're going to get arrested for price gouging. They don't allow for that in America. But yet no, we see where other things happen. Hotel fees goes up. The same fish market, now it's gone up. Hamburgers, cheeseburgers, McDonald's has gone up. All this other stuff has been now knocked out of proportion pertaining to its original balance. Now it's imbalanced. Now it's causing stress and harm in other areas that you never would have thought was being harmed or hurt. And now you got people that's taking advantage of those situations based around the analogy of supply and demand. The more of a demand that you have and the less of a supply that you have, now they think it gives them the rights, instead of charging so much money for this particular product, now we can raise the prices up. Works the same way with the banking industry. Once they start taking hits over here and hits over there, they got to make up for those hits. Now, the way it was explained to me, pertaining to an insurance person, that if you just look at the state of Tennessee alone, and it's a state-by-state basis whenever it comes to the insurance policies. Now, you keep in mind, you got people with all kinds of problems. You got people with sicknesses. You got houses burning. You got people having wrecks. You got people having heart attacks. So the insurance market is steadily drawing in money. But at the same time, the insurance companies are steadily extorting money. They're giving out money. They're having to buy people new homes. They're having to pay off those hospital bills. They're having to get that person back into an automobile because they've made obligations with that person towards being insured, right? I think, if I'm not mistaken, just one insurance company, a major insurance company in the state of Tennessee, in one day brings in something like, if I'm not mistaken, something like $400 million a day through premiums. But then look at the money that they're being out for all the other problems. I was told, I don't know how true it is, let's just take one particular strong insurance company, like somebody like State Farm, or even Farm Bureau, or Farmers, or whoever, that whenever they have a big event to happen, it doesn't matter if it's a hurricane down in Florida, it doesn't matter if it's what happened in Tennessee or North Carolina, it doesn't matter if it's a flood, it don't matter if it's a tornado, it don't matter if it's a fire, that if the event is really that big, then they reach out to their brother and sister stations in other states towards bringing in more money from State Farm to help to cover, because there's no way that they're going to be able to cover all the problems in that one area, in that one state. But what happens if now you've gotten a lick over here, 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 pandemic, oil prices going up, this happening, next thing you know, wow, the resources are getting thin, ain't they? We can't no longer transfer money from over here to take care of these people's problems. We can't transfer money over here and take care of their problems. And what happens? Gets in the middle of a shit storm. That's what happens. Right now, not just the American people, but the world is under attack. And the people that have masterminded this are still living, breathing, talking, and walking over in Saudi Arabia. And right now, even their very God that they believed in is now turning on them, because even though they may be showing big numbers in gains because of the oil, they're still being ravaged just like everybody else. Again and again and again. So you may be asking, well, where is the end game to all this? Well, the end game is for mankind to basically become so miserable that we basically use the analogy of a mercy killing towards killing ourselves off. That way, the main Lucifer, the Antichrist, can beat his chest and shake his fist in the face of God and say, look what I've done. I've brought misery to those people's lives the same as I've brought misery to mine. And that's exactly what he will do if we will allow for him to do that. That's the reason why God anoints preachers, teachers, evangelists. That's the reason why God brings in prophets, people that can foresee all this stuff and look through it. And hopefully Donald Trump is one of those that can understand that this is, whenever Donald Trump talks about draining the swamp, he don't realize how deep and how big the swamp is. It's a global swamp that's been disproportionalized because of various things going on all over the world. Just like World War I, that disproportionalized the global society. World War II, that disproportionalized the world society. Vietnam War, we think that disproportionalized the global society, but in reality it didn't. You know why? Because the global society was strong enough that they could hang on to other areas and still stay afloat. Just like the war in Ukraine, okay? Even though that displaced immediate 12 million people, and even though crazy Putin over there has done some of the craziest things towards what he's done towards flooding agriculture and causing wheat to go up and fuel to go up and everything else, that did affect that area, but it wasn't strong enough to disproportionalize on a global level. But now, if you had enough smaller events all over the global society, that would add up to a major event like World War II, yeah, you could disproportionalize the global society. And that's where we're heading right now, pertaining to COVID, pertaining to the risation of all these oil prices that's destabilized the markets and made economies go crazy, go up, go down. That's where we're at. It's not just a illegal immigrant problem as far as an invasion. This is a much, much bigger problem on a global scale that I don't think even some of your smartest of smart people has sat down and looked at and said, wow, is that what's going on? Yeah, that's what's going on. That's the plan. That's the plan, is to bring civilization to its knees. And as it's bringing civilization to its knees, it's going to bring civilization to its end. Now, who has masterminded this? And what has masterminded this? You may be asking. His name begins with a capital L. Lucifer. That at one time God had enough faith in that he gave him all these powers, but he abused those powers and then tried to overthrow the kingdom of God. He has failed. He has miserably failed because people like myself can see through all this. People like Donald Trump can see through all this, and we're starting to retaliate against these attacks. Which breaks it down to, you don't eat a cow all at once, but you eat him one mouthful at a time. Or a big animal, or let's go back to this particular phrase, Rome wasn't built in one day. You start working on it over here. You start working on it over there. You start working on it over here. But what amazes me is that the smartest of the smart, pertaining to China and Russia and India and Africa and the Philippines and even Mexico and Canada and all these other countries, how come they can't sit down and see this, that this is going to take a global effort in getting us out of all this? Because if not, we're fixing to fall into a calamity like mankind has never seen before. Now, we was smart enough over here in America and strong enough that we kind of halfway put a Band-Aid on the COVID pandemic. But once more, here come the oil industries. They wanted to get their piece of the pie. Then all of a sudden, here come all the banking industries. Raising interest, raising interest, raising interest, raising interest. They was going to maintain their piece of the pie. In the meantime, you got all these other structures that's falling, that's collapsing, that's crumbling below. And they're not smart enough to identify towards what's going on, because it's the little people that make the big people, as long as the big people are staying in check. But whenever the big people start being those ravagers, those hustlers that now want to start charging $20 for a bag of ice that ordinarily costs you about $3 or $4, those are the people that need to go to jail. The swindlers, the hustlers. Those are the people that, instead of them being part of the solution to the problem, they actually are the problem. We have let evil come into our lives, not just in America, but globally speaking, to the point that it has invaded people's lifestyles, people's comfort zones. And now people are feeling it, people are seeing it, but do they understand it? Well, that's where people like myself come in at, towards explaining it. You got to explain it, you got to teach it, you got to put it out there so that they'll understand it. Now, the next question is, will they actually obtain it? Will they receive it? Will they accept it? And then the next question is, will we all work in the same direction towards correcting it? That's the $64,000 question that stands in front of all of us right now, including Donald J. Trump. Which is, okay, we know we can correct it. Are we strong enough to correct it? Yes, we can. But it's going to take the anointing of God to do it, number one. And number two, it's going to take some sacrificing. There's some things that's already been knocked plumb out of normalcy, including our imbalances coming from Mother Nature, that once more is a reaction towards what that we have done to her. She is responding. It's kind of like the planet now regurgitating itself back up onto the human race. Well, this is all correspondence to what the Bible teaches towards woe, be unto the inhabitants whenever you shall start to see these things starting to occur that we've already been warned about. Nation rising against nation. Families being separated and torn apart. Commotions, disturbances. If you add all that in together with not only mankind's problems, but also Mother Nature's problems, now you got a formula of a disaster. And Satan right now is sitting back. The Antichrist, the Luciferian Lucifer, he's sitting back right now and he's laughing. And he thinks that he has the tiger by the tail, per se. But I got news for Lucifer. I got news for every demon, regardless whether they be in America or all over the planet. You have failed. The time has come for you to surrender. And you're going to go through the punishment that you deserve in one format or the other, because the Bible says that it would have been easier for all of heaven and for all of earth to pass than for one jot, one little tittle of God's words to fail. And we know that out of all the things that the Heavenly Father can do, one of the things that he won't do is that he will not lie. So whatever has been predicted in the Bible to happen, to occur, just as it talks about, that all prophecies will be fulfilled in the final remaining last days here upon earth, and we're starting to see that now, especially because of the engine of social media. We're starting to see that now all over the planet in some form or fashion. And it spells horror. Horror is the opposite of peace. The individuals talking to you right now, that's the founder of the Windmill Ministries, have been trying to open people's eyes for the past 30 plus years. People didn't want to sit down and reason. They didn't want to listen. They didn't want to read the Bible. They didn't want to listen to instructions because everybody thought that they had the answer. Well, now we're seeing that now none of them have the answer. Even the very professionals, the first class, the smartest of the smart, has now run us off into the mouth of the volcano almost. So we have a choice. We can either continue to keep ignoring people such as myself, or we can start to listen, start to adapt, become teachable. Because obviously, this thing has been taunted. It has been messed with. It has been invaded. It's been contaminated. Now the next question is, how do we straighten it out? How do we use all these tools now for the betterment of mankind? Not to be used as an instrument of a weapon, but to better our lives. Well, that's where we have to sit down and start talking about things and start opening up our eyes to the truth and quit thinking that it's somebody else's problem. Because it's not. It's all of our problem. We're all living on the same planet. We all have the same, basically, blood running through our veins, even though it may have a different formula or a different type, or it may have a little of this or a little of that. But we're all still human beings. And I'm still having trouble wrapping my mind around the fact that during the Civil War, there was people in the world, much less in America, that could not see a black man or a black woman towards them being equal as far as being a human. Now, you talk about a blinded society during that time. Of course, we see where other cultures and we see where other generations has been blinded. But I didn't realize that slavery was that blind. I didn't realize that evil had penetrated into the hearts and minds of so many people that they was actually looking at human beings, though they had a different color suntan, that these people wasn't human. These was some sort of a alien form, or maybe they needed to be put in some sort of a category of being a different species of a animal form. I have problems accepting that and looking at that towards how gruesome, how grotesque could people's thinking be. But then again, listen to me carefully. I have problems in thinking how the Romans at one time was throwing the Christians off into the lions' dens while they was laughing and being entertained, while these people was screaming and hollering, and while these vicious, cruel animals was eating them alive. Friends, what I'm getting at, evil has always been evil. It will always be evil. Christ not one time never made fun of his adversary. He never gave the adversary any leadway towards thinking that this entity was not out to kill, steal, and destroy, because it is. And it's still just as barbaric and just as grossly unhuman today as what it ever was, going back to its original form thousands of years ago. If there's ever been a time that that man right there, sitting in that seat, needed every Christian prayer from not just the American society, but from all Christians all over the world, that's what he needs right now. Because he's got the power in his hands to do a great deal of good for the planet, for the Christians, for our veterans, for those true patriots. And that's what he's trying to display. And I just pray to God that the rest of the people can understand that and see that, because they're going to gnaw on him. They're going to paw on him. They're going to degrade him. They're going to judge him. They're going to condemn him. They're going to throw every rock that they can against him to try to break him down, just like they have done to every other true Christian again and again. So the Bible says to think it not strange whenever you shall be tried this way, that your enemies will actually encamp you with a trench all around you, which basically puts me where I'm at today in the year 2025 here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, and basically realizing that it's time to hunker down. It's time to dig in. So you wonder how come that I thank God every day because of being able to reach out to various people that want to listen to the truth. Most people don't want to hear the truth. But I thank God every day for social media that I can at least express my feelings and tell people that want to hear this is what's actually occurring, because I truly believe that there will be a movement out of all this, and God's children will rise above all this if we allow for the Holy Spirit to work within us and to teach us in what to do and what not to do. That's the only way we're going to get out of this. And I've said that all along, and I'll continue to say that. It's going to take divine intervention to not only set the good old USA back on the straight and narrow, but the world in general, because I guarantee you we have taken on lick after lick after lick, and it has been profound. It has been unprecedented in some of the things that I have witnessed all over the world. Please listen.
Demand that the interest rates come down.
Well, I would put in a strong statement.
Do you expect the Fed to listen to you?
Yeah.
Are you going to talk to Powell about this and bringing the rates down?
At the right time, I would.
So did any of the people you pardoned that were participated in the January 6, 2021 do you plan to meet with any of them or meet with them at the White House?
I don't know. I'm sure that they probably would like to. I did them something important, but what they did is they were protesting a crooked election. And, I mean, people understand that also. And they were treated very badly.
Once more, I think it wasn't necessarily because they was convinced of a crooked election. I truly believe that people out there could see the heading of where our government had placed their citizenship into, and because of it, they was willing to do whatever it took to try to reverse that. There's more to this story other than the big lie. I promise you. There's more to what went on January the 6th that if you'll go back to the core of origin, back into the White House in 1988, Ronald Reagan's administration and the Bush administration that started this, that went to the left instead of the right, there's a whole lot more to this story than the big lie. Because if the truth be known, they was probably already convinced before they ever got up to the Capitol building that day of a lot of them reasoning among themselves by saying, well, what if? What if they're right? What if this wasn't a steal? But did that stop them? No. They still went up there. Why? Because they knew that something had occurred to our American structure. And they knew that being trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, that basically our freedom was on the line. Our self-indignation was on the line. Our dignity was on the line. And a lot of them people, I'll still believe it to this day, got caught up of being at the wrong place at the wrong time pertaining to a tumult. That's exactly what happened whenever Christ got executed. In his execution, there was a great deal of people that got caught up in all that excitement. And because of it, a lot of them was either scared to speak up, or they was already brainwashed in the degree of not speaking up. And whenever Christ was hanging on that cross, and he looked up into the heavens and he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, there was a certain portion of people within that thousand man crowd, I'm just using that metaphorically, that did not know what they was doing. They may have thought that they knew what they was doing, but they didn't really know what they was doing. They was caught up in the hype of it. So there was a certain amount of people in that group of people that Christ recognized towards Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. But on the other hand, there was also another certain amount of people in that group of people that knowed exactly what they was doing, or they thought that they did, until Christ rose again on the third day, proving them all wrong.
And treated like that. So I'd be open to it, certainly. I don't know of anything like that, but I think they're going to meet, and some of the congressmen, women, want to meet. But I'd certainly be open to it.
Have you spoken to them since you issued the pardons?
I haven't spoken to any of them yet.
I'll say this about the guy: at least he don't sit there and run from the questions like Biden did. Biden got to the point he would just come right out into the audience. He'd say whatever he wanted to say. And whenever it come to freedom of speech towards the media being able to question him and ask him any questions, he just turns back on the media and walk away. Act like he didn't hear nothing. Wow, that's a leader? You can't even explain to us why you feel this way, or why you see things this way, or why you're doing what you're doing? Really? And you're the great fearless leader? Really?
I know they're very happy.
Mr. President,
I gave them their life back. Their life was taken away from them unnecessarily and unfairly. I gave them their life back, so I can imagine they probably would like to.
Mr. President,
when you said that Biden took bad advice and not pardoning himself yesterday?
Well, he did. I think he did, because he pardoned all these people that are crooked as hell. Look, the congressmen, they're crooked. What they did is they destroyed evidence. When you destroy evidence, especially criminally like that, they did it criminally. And the reason they destroyed the evidence is because it proved that I was right. They didn't destroy evidence for no reason. They destroyed it because they found many documents saying that I offered 10,000 soldiers. If they had 500 soldiers or National Guard, there would have been no problem. If they had 200, that would have been. I offered 10,000 if they needed them. There would have been no problem. That's been...
So it was a setup. It was a setup pertaining to the mix-up on the day of January the 6th. And you know what? I don't doubt that one bit, because Nancy Pelosi was supposed to have been handling those resources, and I guarantee you it was purposely, not ignorantly, not unintentionally, it was intentionally looked over. And because of it, there should be a major investigation on that. And the fact of the matter is, in how Biden is trying to protect his family, knowing of their illegal activity, should speak volumes to the American people that, wow, the guilty dog usually barks first, don't he? Uh-huh. There's a lot of things that a lot of people need to open up their eyes in, and I just pray to God for this man that he will be able to achieve his godly objectives.
That's been now totally disproven, and it's also been disproven by Nancy Pelosi's daughter, who has her on tape saying it was her fault, that she has full responsibility for this.
See?
And they have all this stuff.
See?
They destroyed everything. And they go through a year and a half, 2 years of nonsense. They come up with tremendous evidence, and they destroyed evidence. And Schiff knew about it. That's why he's on there. He knew all about the destruction.
Which makes them an accessory to the crime. Which makes them, not this man, but the Biden family, the Biden team, an accessory to the crimes. Go figure. As I said a while ago, this is deeper than just the steal. This goes beyond the motivation of people thinking that this is pertaining to a group of people that could see where they had been bamboozled. Maybe not necessarily bamboozled over this election, but bamboozled in general, pertaining to us being in the situation that we're in, and they were speaking out in retaliation of that, and they got caught up into a big hoopla for the most part. Not all of them. There was some of them that went in there knowing what they was going to do, or had the intentions of doing what they was going to do, and those people I don't think should be pardoned. And if they did let them out, they should go get them. Go get them, bring them back to the jails, and have a court on them, and really look at this situation under a microscope, because that's the whole primary principle for the probation bureau, the parties of probation, of coming together not as one person but as a group of people, and assessing whether or not this person, whether or not the whole group of people feel like that person's been reformed to the degree that that person can be released back out into society, or whether or not they need to hold them. And why do they do that for? It's called safety. It's a safety net created in our judicial system, to where, you know, if you're still spewing out all kinds of ugly behavior, and you're still not even showing any type of remorse, you're actually proud, kind of like that one guy said, oh yeah, if I had all to do over with, I'd go do it again. Oh, I'm proud of me doing what I've done. Well, really, is that really the smartest thing to say in front of a camera? After you being one of the fumigators that helped to go in there and start all this crap? Wow. I think that person's life needs to be evaluated. I think his whole case needs to be evaluated. I think somebody like that really needs, a group of people really need to sit down and look and say, maybe this wasn't the right decision after all. And I'm pretty sure there's probably a handful of them in there. Out of the 1,500, there's probably 10 or 15, 25, maybe more, maybe less, I don't know, that really need to be looked at. They need to be analyzed. They need to be inspected. They need to be examined. The situation needs to be examined. Not through with their examination yet. If we're going to have a safe society, a civilized, safe society, we're going to have people that's reasonable enough to sit down and listen and look, discuss, debate, talk, and then make a decision that this particular situation is in the situation that people think that it's in, and because of it, we're going to handle it this way. I realize what he done of a blanket, pardon like that, was to basically go through all the red tape. But I also think that maybe somebody didn't think that through just exactly right, pertaining to some of the misfits or some of the agitators that actually went in there with the intentions of going to put blood on the floor. And you can't say that that wasn't their intent.
And a lot of people said he's the one that got him to do it. And he's a crooked guy, totally crooked politician. And so he's pardoned, and some other people are pardoned. And these are crooked politicians, every one of them. Benny Johnson, what he did is incredible. I mean, he was the leader of the committee, and he did it. Cheney, crying Adam Kinzinger, all of them. They destroyed evidence and deleted everything. There's nothing. There's no evidence now. They're crooked politicians, and they should be punished. That's even in a civil trial, you go to jail for a thing like that. They destroyed every document, from what I understand, every document, because it proved that I was totally innocent.
Mr. President, to send up to 10,000 troops to the southern border, sir.
Yeah. Oh, southern border?
Yes,
When
the
you
border.
say southern border, when I said 10,000 troops, I was referring to the capital.
Oh, I see. And
No,
when,
yeah,
when
I
you
was
plan,
referring to the
when
capital.
you plan
I
to do
offered
that?
10,000 troops for the capital before January 6th.
And as for the 1,500 at the southern border, sir, to clarify, what exactly do you want them to be doing right now?
Making sure that the border is safe and secure and that criminals don't come into our country.
Mr. President,
Do you think that sanctions on Russia will force President Putin to negotiate?
I don't know, but I think he should make a deal.
Mr. President, does it bother you that Elon Musk criticized a deal that you made publicly, that he said that he tweeted that?
No, it doesn't. He hates one of the people in the deal.
Have you spoken to him since then?
No, I've spoken to Elon, but I've spoken to all of them, actually. No, look, the people in the deal are very, very smart people. But Elon, one of the people he happens to hate, but I have certain hatreds of people too.
Sir,
Mr.
on China, what do you think Xi Jinping can do on the Ukraine-Russia war?
Which one?
The Ukraine-Russia war. What can Xi Jinping do about that?
China?
Yeah.
They have a lot of power over Russia. They supply energy to Russia. And Russia supplies energy to them. They supply other things to, it's really a very big trade. It's a very big trading partner. But Russia supplies a lot of energy to China. China pays them a lot of money for that. And I think they have a lot of power over Russia. So I think Russia should want to make a deal. Maybe they want to make a deal. I think from what I hear, Putin would like to see me, and we'll meet as soon as we can. I'd meet immediately. Every day we don't meet, soldiers are being killed in a battlefield. And that battlefield is like no battlefield since World War II. That's it.
It's a slaughterhouse.
I have pictures that you don't want to see. Soldiers are being killed on a daily basis at numbers that we haven't seen in decades. And it'd be nice to end that war. It's a ridiculous war.
Probably seen disfigured bodies everywhere, heads, arms, heads cut off, blowed up. I can only imagine. But on the same token, I can only imagine what's went on over there with Hamas in Jerusalem, over there in all that battle too. And the worst thing about looking at that carnal damage is that was a lot of that carnal damage is children, innocent lives, innocent children. It's bad. All this stuff all this stuff is in the opposite direction of peace and utopia. The very message that I've been preaching for the past 30 plus years. And you wonder how come I'm upset, or how come I'm Disappointed? Wow. What a question.
You said that Ukraine's ready to make a deal. Did President Zelensky tell you that?
Yeah, sure. He's ready to negotiate a deal. He'd like to stop. He's somebody that lost a lot of soldiers, and so did Russia. Lost a lot. Russia lost more soldiers. They lost 800,000 soldiers. Would you say that's a lot? I'd say it's a lot.
You said that you wanted to make Dr. King's dream a reality. What's your response to his children and civil rights leaders who say that your DEI orders are a contradiction of his dream and could further drive racial disparities?
Well, I haven't heard that.
Mr. President, you put the Houthis back on the terror list. How do you see the war in Yemen end?
Well, we'll see what happens, but they can't shoot down our ships, the Houthis.
Yes.
And that, you can't shoot down our ships, or any ships, and that's what they've been doing. So they're on the terror list. That's not good for them.
So why did you revoke security protections for former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Brian Hook?
Well, the same reason when you have protection, you can't have it for the rest of your life. Do you want to have a large detail of people guarding people for the rest of their lives? I mean, there's risks to everything.
So would you support striking Iran?
Today is the 24th of January. According to the little tattletale that I'm looking at there, it says Thursday. So this was on the 23rd whenever he's answering all these questions, because he's on his way right now to evaluate the situation a little deeper over in North Carolina and Tennessee, and then from there he's going to fly out west to examine that situation out there pertaining to all the fires. So I just wanted to bring that to my viewers' attention in time stamping this correctly.
Nuclear facilities.
Say it.
Would you support Israel, for example, striking Iran's nuclear facilities?
Well, I'm
or
not
do you
going to answer
believe in
that.
diplomacy?
Obviously, I'm not going to answer that question. We'll have to see. I'm going to be meeting with various people over the next couple of days. We'll see. But hopefully that can be worked out without having to worry about it. It would be nice. It would really be nice if that could be worked out without having to go that further step.
And who are you going to meet with or something?
Well, I'd rather not say that, but very high-level people. But hopefully that can be worked out. Look, Iran hopefully will make a deal, and if they don't make a deal, I guess that's okay too.
And Mr. President, just to follow up, you said you think the Fed should listen to you. Can you elaborate on why you think it should have?
With regard to interest rates?
Correct, yes.
Because I think I know interest rates much better than they do. And I think I know it certainly much better than the one who's primarily in charge of making that decision. But no, I'm guided by them very much. But if I disagree, I will let it be known.
So your tariff plans for China and Mexico are much tougher. The ones for Canada and Mexico are much tougher than the one for China. Why is it softer for China?
Well, China's already paying a lot of tariffs because
sometimes God will put
and
you in.
When you add them up, I would say, they're paying a lot. They paid hundreds of billions of dollars. They never paid 10 cents until I came along.
So all
when
the
I came
prayers
along,
of God get me out of this, God get me
paid
through this.
hundreds
There are
of billions
things that
of
God
dollars.
wants to do as
Never
you
paid
go through
anything.
them, that if you
And,
don't do
so
those
they've
things,
already
you can't
started
be
at a higher-
fruitful. Sometimes God will put you in a situation because he puts something in you that situation needs. So all the prayers of God get me out of this, God get me through this, there are things that God wants to do as you go through them, that if you don't do those things, you can't be fruitful. Sometimes.
That's very true. I just wanted to make mention of that. Let's back up just a little bit. I want to catch all this. I don't want to miss it. Right there.
With regard to interest rates?
Correct, yes.
Because I think I know interest rates much better than they do. And I think I know it certainly much better than the one who's primarily in charge of making that decision. But no, I'm guided by them very much. But if I disagree, I will let it be known.
So your tariff plans for China and Mexico are much tougher. The ones for Canada and Mexico are much tougher than the one for China. Why is it softer for China?
Well, China's already paying a lot of tariffs because of me. And when you add them up, I would say, they're paying a lot. They paid hundreds of billions of dollars. They never paid 10 cents until I came along. When I came along, they've paid hundreds of billions of dollars. never paid anything. And so they've already started at a higher base.
Is February 1st the date for Chinese tariffs as well, sir? February 1, or was that just Mexico and Canada?
It's Mexico and Canada, but we're talking about China too. Look, China's sending us tremendous amounts of bad drugs, fentanyl, really bad stuff. Most of it comes through Mexico. And we're losing, I think, 300,000 lives a year because of that. People say 150, 100, 120. I think 300,000 lives a year. Those are old numbers. The lower numbers are low number. And we can't have that. They've got to stop sending it. I had a deal with President Xi, but it was a deal that wasn't followed up by Biden, of course, where they were going to issue the death penalty to people that make fentanyl, and that would have stopped it. But we'll have to stop it with tariffs. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, guys. Hey, press, let's go. Thanks, guys.
There you go.
President Trump is traveling to Asheville, North Carolina today to meet with those who were impacted by Hurricane Helene back in September. This morning, he'll receive an update on recovery efforts. We'll bring that to you live here on C-SPAN. You can also watch on the free C-SPAN Now video app or online at cspan.org.
Their warnings were not listened to, and so there was understandably fury among the parents of those young women. And we are going to see tomorrow, if everything goes according to plan, the release of these 4 female soldiers, Karina Ariel.
Okay, let's go on here. Go.
The state, Biden lost the state. Maybe he felt he doesn't care. Maybe there were other reasons, I don't know, but this has been very slow. By any standard, this has been very slow, and we're gonna make up for lost time.
No conditions, you're going to push for aid.
Well, in California, I have a condition. In California, we want them to have voter ID so the people have a voice, because right now the people don't have a voice because you don't know who's voting, and it's very corrupt. And we also want them to release water. If they released the water, they wouldn't have had a problem. If they released the water when I told them to, because I told them to do it 7 years ago, if they would have done it, you wouldn't have had the problem that you had. You might not have even had a fire. So, but here I don't have that. It's a different thing. You got hit by a storm. The people are incredible. They worked really well. Franklin was fantastic, and other groups. By the way, other groups came in that were also fantastic, and other states came in. Tennessee and a couple of others came in, and they really helped. That's the way it's supposed to be. No, this is a different kind of a thing.
How much funding you would allocate for disaster relief?
About what?
Have you decided how much funding you would allocate for disaster relief?
I haven't. I have to see what it is.
Are you disappointed that Senator Schiff hasn't joined you on this trip? It's reported you invited Senator Schiff to join you on this trip, and he was too busy. Are you disappointed?
I don't know. I was told that Schiff was going to travel with us to California. I wasn't thrilled, to be honest with you. And I saw him last night on television. It looks like he got hit with a baseball bat or something. What happened to him? Something happened to him. It looked like he got hit. It looked like he got beat around. But I'll ask Caroline to find out what happened to him. No, if he wanted to come out, I would have done that. But I don't know. Somebody said that he wanted to come on the plane, but I think he's staying back for the votes. There's some pretty good votes going on. Yeah.
What is your timeline for getting rid of FEMA?
I would for this one.
You just talked about possibly getting rid of FEMA. What timeline are you looking at, and how would you do that?
Well, we're looking here. Here, you're talking about to start. We're going to start immediately. Timeline, and to finish, it's going to be a period of time. People are also rebuilding their houses. How long does it take to build a house? Right, it takes some time, and I want them to build houses bigger, better, nicer than they had before, so they can have, at least they get something out of this disaster. This was a real disaster. No, timeline will be fast. In terms of infrastructure, I think very fast. I want to thank Elon, because Elon was able to get us communication systems, as you know, Starlink. We had no communication. The first day I got here, I was asked by one of the people, one of the really great representatives, professionals, that is there any way you could get Starlink here? Because they had no communication whatsoever. And I called up Elon Musk, and he had, hundreds of units brought here, brought immediately. And it's hard to get. They couldn't get them before. And that made a lot of difference. I think it saved a lot of lives, actually. Yeah. Infrastructure-wise, we'll do it quickly.
Sir, can you just talk about how long you think it might take to get rid of FEMA? What's the timeline on that? If you're going to roll it back?
Yeah, I would say, look, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not really thinking about FEMA right now here. I'm thinking about Michael Watley, and I'm thinking about the 3 Congress people that you just heard from, and also the other people in Congress, and they'll be working with the governor. So that's what I see.
Change the subject real quickly. The Lakin Riley Act was signed by Speaker Johnson yesterday.
Right.
When do you anticipate to sign that?
Well, we're honored by that. Lakin Riley, I was there at the time, and we had a big meeting with the parents right after that horrible thing took place. And we have an act. You all know what that act represents. And it was a bipartisan bill. Many Democrats signed on to it. That's something that is a tribute to Lakin, a beautiful young lady who was killed viciously by an illegal alien. And we passed a very powerful bill, and it was just approved, and we'll have a ceremony sometime very shortly. I'll be signing it. In other words, if you're asking, I will definitely be signing it. Okay? Yeah.
Mr. President, the security detail for Anthony Fauci was terminated last night, and I'm wondering if you have any comment on that.
About what?
The security detail for Anthony Fauci was terminated last night, sir. Do you have a comment?
No, I think, when you work for government, at some point your security detail comes off. And, you can't have them forever. So I think it's very standard. If it would be for somebody else, you wouldn't be asking the question. The question is very fair. But, you work for government. We took some off other people, too. But you can't have a security detail for the rest of your life because you work for government.
Will you take it off, sir?
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Do you feel partially responsible for what happened to, say, Dr. Fauci
No.
or John Bolton?
No. They all made a lot of money. They can hire their own security, too. All the people you're talking about, they can go out. I can give them some good numbers of very good security people. They can hire their own security. They all made a lot of money. Fauci made a lot of money. They all did. So if they, felt that strongly, I think that certainly I would not take responsibility.
North Carolina is a state that relies on trade and manufacturing. Are you going to have an announcement on new tariffs coming soon? Is there a timeline now?
Yeah, the tariffs are going to make our country rich. We're going to be a rich, rich country very soon. Tariffs are going to make it rich, and competence. We have common sense, competence, and tariffs. The word tariff is one of the most beautiful words in the dictionary.
Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary of the United Kingdom, said that there's an even trade between the U.S. and the UK, so they shouldn't have tariffs. Does trade imbalances or a balanced trade affect tariffs and your decisions?
Yeah, unbalanced and balance, and also deficits. Like with Canada, we lose $200 billion a year with Canada. That's because we allow them to make cars. We allow them to take lumber. We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their food products because we make the same products right on the other side of the border. It's sort of crazy. So we've just allowed that, bad management has allowed it over the last 4 years in particular to become very imbalanced. And I said I call him Governor Trudeau, but he's Prime Minister Trudeau when he was Prime Minister. I asked him, why would we do that? Why? And he was unable to give me an answer. He said, I don't know. And I said, do you think it's fair that we're paying $200 billion to keep Canada going? And what would happen, I asked him, what would happen if we didn't do that, if we didn't subsidize Canada? He said, we'd be a failed nation. And I said, then you should be a state. Because why are we paying all of that money to Canada when, we could use it ourselves, right? So we take care of their military. We're going to order about 40 Coast Guard big icebreakers, big ones. And all of a sudden Canada wants a piece of the deal. They say, why are we doing that? I mean, I like doing that if they're a state, but I don't like doing that if they're a nation. Also, they've been very nasty to us on trade. Historically, Canada has been very, very bad to us, very unfair to us on trade. So we'll see how it all works out.
The United Kingdom
I
might
would
be
love
the
to
better
see
spot.
Canada be the 51st state. The Canadian citizens, if that happened, would get a very big tax cut, tremendous tax cut, because they're very highly taxed. And you wouldn't have to worry about military. You wouldn't have to worry about many of the things. You'd have better health coverage. You'd have much better health coverage. So I think the people of Canada would like it, if it's explained. But just to start off, they'd have a massive tax cut, and they'd have a lot more business, because then we'd let business go to Canada routinely, and there'd be no tariffs. If we did that, there'd be no tariffs.
So the United Kingdom might be in a better spot then.
Reverend Franklin Graham has been a great asset to the state. Talk a little bit about the way the Samaritan Purse has helped North Carolina.
Yeah, say it once again. The first.
Reverend Franklin Graham has been a big part of Samaritan Purse and their aid to North Carolina. Just want to get your thoughts
Well,
on that.
Franklin Graham has been a big asset to the state. His father was a big asset to the state, to the country, both of them. I just think this. I think Franklin and other people that are doing what Franklin have done, but I've known Franklin so long. He was at the inauguration. He made a speech, beautiful prayer. He does a great job. And we made a big donation, and it was money well spent. Sometimes you make donations, it's not well spent. He's done a great job here. He's done a really great job. So I want to thank you. We're going to the site now, and one of the sites, and I think for those that haven't seen it, you won't even believe it, but not enough work was done. We'll get it done fast. And I can speak for the Republican congressman. We're going to knock it out, right? We're going to knock it out. And I think we take it very personally, because North Carolina was very unfairly treated. Very, very unfairly treated. And it was obvious. It was too obvious. And we're going to make up for lost time. So thank you to the people of North Carolina. Thank you, everybody.
There you go. We got part of that anyways.
All right, we have just been listening to U.S. President Donald Trump on his visit to disaster recovery zones in North Carolina. Live from New York, I'm Rahel Solomon. This is One World. Let's recap a little of what we just heard from the president there. He is in Fletcher, North Carolina. That is an area that's about 15 to 20 miles south of Asheville, which is where he first came in. That's where we first heard him speak at the top of the 11 o'clock hour. He's there to survey the damage from Hurricane Helene, which is the worst hurricane to hit U.S. mainland since Hurricane Katrina, which was in about 2005. The death toll in that state, the highest among the states, it was about 105, 106 people who lost their lives. There is clearly still a lot of damage on the ground there. There is clearly still a lot of debris on the ground there. A few things we heard from the president. He said he prioritized getting to North Carolina as soon as he could, in terms of as soon as he was inaugurated. He said he will work to get help as soon as they can. He, yet again, blasted FEMA, real questions about the future of FEMA after his comments, both now and also at the top of the hour. He said FEMA did a bad job. He blasted Biden. He was asked about a potential executive order to dismantle FEMA. He said he's not working on that right now. He's working on North Carolina. But what it sounds like is that he will be leaning on local officials as opposed to FEMA. He said FEMA comes in, they don't know where they're going. He said they're bureaucratic. He said they're very slow, cost a lot of money. So again, a lot of questions about FEMA this afternoon in response to these comments from the president. He is there surrounded by local government officials in the state of North Carolina. North Carolina, just to give you a sense, is a state that tends to be red, but at times during presidential elections has gone blue, so you might call it a swing state. But it has voted for President Trump the last 3 elections. And he said earlier that when he was elected, everyone was talking about California, but he said, I can't go to California until I get to North Carolina, perhaps hinting at the political differences between a state like California, which is solidly blue, versus North Carolina. And as I just said there a moment ago, we heard Trump today multiple times blast the federal government's response to last September's hurricane. Let's take a listen.
Probably less FEMA, because FEMA just hasn't done the job. And we're looking at the whole concept of FEMA. I like, frankly, the concept when North Carolina gets hit, the governor takes care of it. When Florida gets hit, the governor takes care of it, meaning the state takes care of it.
Now, while he is in North Carolina, his administration is making clear that it's the president's immigration crackdown that is front and center. And the words of his border czar, the gloves are off. The White House says that hundreds of migrants were arrested on Thursday, and others have been flown out of the country on military aircraft. It all comes as 1,500 active U.S. troops remain poised at the southern border. And as the Justice Department directed its prosecutors to investigate state or local officials who stand in the way of the president's agenda. Let's go now to Natasha Bertrand, who joins us live at the Pentagon. Natasha, what more can you share with us about the president's deportation plans of migrants, especially using military aircraft? What do you know?
Yeah, this is really an all-hands-on-deck moment for the Pentagon, and that's because the president has indicated that this is a national emergency that's happening at the border now. And so whereas the Department of Homeland Security really bore the brunt of having to patrol the border and having to, come up with all of the resources that come, of course, with patrolling the border, now the Department of Defense is getting more and more involved in a way that it wasn't under the previous administration, to include the use of these military aircraft, including C-17s and C-130s. This is a pretty unprecedented picture that we are seeing, and it was actually tweeted out by the White House press secretary this morning of a U.S. military aircraft being loaded up with migrants in handcuffs being prepared for deportation back to, we are told, Guatemala in this first flight that occurred yesterday. It is a very striking image here, and it's one that the Department of Defense has not always been eager to play a role in because it is very sensitive for the military to be conducting operations domestically. And so while we are told that the military right now at the border, which includes around 2,200 active duty forces in addition to the roughly 1,500 that are going to be arriving there really any day now, they are not going to be conducting law enforcement per se. They are not going to be making arrests. They're not going to be seizing drugs, for example. But the presence there, and of course the use of these military aircraft, it does send a message that the Trump administration has been eager to send to these migrants that this is really an emergency and that the U.S. military is going to have a very beefed up presence and very, robust mission now at the border. So what we are told is that we can expect up to 10,000 additional active duty forces to be deployed to the border, again, in furtherance of this goal by the administration to make this look like it is a really huge emergency and all possible resources are being used for it. And we are going to be seeing these troops arriving in waves. And just this morning, we were actually told that the 82nd Airborne Division, which is one of the most storied units in the military, is going to be deployed in the coming weeks down to the border. Why is that significant? The 82nd Airborne is typically used in global crises. It is basically like the 911 service for the U.S. military. They can deploy extremely quickly to global crises really anywhere in the world. So by sending them down there, you have the optics, of course, of this being the kind of emergency and crisis that President Trump has made it out to be, Rahel.
Natasha Bertrand reporting live from the Pentagon for us. Natasha, thank you. And immigrant communities throughout the U.S. are facing growing fear and uncertainty, are now bracing for the worst. The mayor of Newark, New Jersey says that his city has been, quote, unlawfully terrorized after federal agents raided a local business and detained multiple people on Thursday, including U.S. citizens, without producing arrest warrants. The mayor called it an egregious violation of the U.S. Constitution, and he spoke about it a short time ago. Take a listen.
Obviously, some ICE agents raided a business in our city without a warrant. They went in the back of the establishment. We believe that there were 3 people who they say were undocumented that they detained, but they also detained folks that were, in fact, citizens of this country. One person showed their military veteran identification and was still questioned anyway.
Now, CNN has not been able to independently verify those details, but as we mentioned a short time ago, President Trump is touring 2 areas of the country utterly devastated by natural disasters. Mr. Trump's first stop is western North Carolina, where we saw him a short time ago. That area is still recovering from the massive flooding brought by Hurricane Helene in September. While surveying the damage there, the president said that he thinks he wants to get rid of FEMA, the federal agency that handles recovery from natural disasters, and he says that he wants to let states tackle disaster recovery. North Carolina voted for the president, and he visited the state numerous times during the campaign, promising to help it rebuild. President Trump will then fly cross country to Southern California, where recent wildfires have wiped out entire communities. He has been highly critical of Democratic politicians in the state, and just moments ago he said he wants to attach conditions to any aid he gives the state. Take a listen.
I want two things. I want voter ID for the people of California, and they all want it. Right now, you don't have voter ID. People want to have voter identification. You want to have proof of citizenship. Ideally, you have one-day voting, but I just want voter ID as a start, and I want the water to be released, and they're going to get a lot of help from the U.S.
Let's get to CNN's Julia Vargas Jones, who joins us live in Altadena, California. Julia, give us a sense of when the president reaches California, what he'll see on the ground there.
Yeah, Rahel, look, he will be getting a sense of the destruction, both via an aerial tour of the Palisades fire on the west side of Los Angeles, and we're not sure if he will make his way over here to Altadena. But we do know that Governor Gavin Newsom said that he plans to welcome the president at LAX when he lands here this afternoon, despite not getting much communication from the White House. The governor said he looks forward to being there on the tarmac and thank the president. He said he was happy that he took his invitation to be here. Of course, this is a test, Rahel, of this relationship between Trump and Newsom, who had their tensions in the past, but they have also been able to work together. Back in 2018, when the governor was already in his first term and the president as well, they worked together through the campfire. And at this point, it's a test of not just their relationship, but also of these policies that Trump is now saying that he wants to impose. Governor Gavin Newsom has released about $2.5 billion of aid to California, to Southern California, to help with both fighting these fires, which are still ongoing over here, but also to help with the rebuilding. But the estimate is that the cost of rebuilding all of this will be at least 10 times more than that, and that he is relying on the federal government for this kind of aid. So the hope with this visit is that Trump himself might be able to see the devastation and perhaps be able to find a way to get this aid to Californians that need it the most. I'll add, Rahel, that we're not done with the disaster here in Southern California, as we're expecting rains in the coming days that could turn into mudslides and potentially drag all of the toxic debris that is here in Altadena and in the Palisades and other parts of the state that have been hit by these devastating fires. That could flood into residential areas. The city and the state and the county authorities have received a lot of criticism for their handling of the fires, but they said that they are prepared for this time with different machinery coming up and down. We've been seeing all morning here in Altadena. They are digging basically trenches to stop the water from rolling down the St. Gabriel Hills and into these neighborhoods here in Altadena. In preparation for this, also handing out sandbags for the population, telling people to turn off their electricity at home if they are in these flood-prone areas. Rahel, we still don't know what more could come from these rains, but authorities and meteorologists saying that if the rains hit these badly burned areas heavily, it could be as deadly as the fires.
Okay. Julia Vargas Jones, live for us there in the devastated community of Altadena, California. Thank you. Now let's get to where President Trump is right now, North Carolina, and our CNN's Jeff Zeleny is also there. Jeff, we heard the president blast FEMA repeatedly, both in those comments he just made and the comments he made at the top of the hour. He said FEMA is slow, they cost a lot of money, they're bureaucratic. Are those criticisms fair?
Look, I mean, there's no question that there are critics on both sides of the political aisle about how FEMA operates and how it hands out housing vouchers and food assistance, etc. However, I think painting with a broad brush like that, something else is going on here. This is part of the Trump administration's and the president's essentially his effort to remake and reshape the government. It has long been, FEMA has long been in the crosshairs of some conservatives thinking the agency is a bit of a waste. But the challenge here is, of course, whenever there is a disaster, people need a responsible agency to come in and help them. So the politics of this and politicizing this is not something that is going to be helpful. Thinking back to many disasters, of course, they strike red states and blue states, and now there is a discussion about attaching strings and conditions on some of this funding. But the FEMA, in particular here in North Carolina, there has been a criticism, there's no doubt, about how long it has taken some of the relief. You can still see behind me here, this is just one tiny slice of the long recovery ahead. This used to be an art gallery here in the River Arts District of Asheville. The president is going to another location to see some devastated homes and things. So is FEMA perfect? It's not, but the question is dismantling it going to be helpful for the next disaster? That's something that Congress will have to decide.
And also the thought, Jeff, of conditioning aid in some places, perhaps not others. He said repeatedly today that he wants to attach strings to California funding for the fire recovery, but when asked if he planned to attach aid or conditions for North Carolina funding, he said, look, we're going to do a lot for North Carolina. It's been very slow. We're going to make up for lost time. Talk to me about that.
Look, that was very different, and suggesting that Michael Whatley, who's from North Carolina, the chair of the Republican National Committee, putting him in charge of relief efforts here, that is injecting politics into this. But in terms of tying funding, the president talking there about if California wants funding, he would like to see a voter ID bill passed. That, of course, would be a state law that would be passed for voters to show identification before casting ballots, which has nothing to do with disaster aid. So this is going to be a conversation that the president has injected himself in, adding politics to it, perhaps a shiny object, if you will, to take away from the actual discussion of the amount of the aid, but it seems now to be central to this conversation. And Republicans in Congress are serious about tying some strings to this aid. Of course, Democrats will argue no strings were attached to a Katrina aid back in the day and other things in red states. So the politics are at the center of this, even as people in California and here in North Carolina still need so much help. Rahel?
Jeff Zeleny, great to have your insights and analysis there. Live for us in Asheville, North Carolina. Jeff,
I'm going to say something as I'm fixing to cut this recording off. They talked about Katrina. Yeah, Katrina wasn't regulated, but also they lost millions and millions of dollars, and even to this day, they still have not held people accountable for. Millions. Good luck to all of us. God bless America, God bless our troops, and God bless our endeavors. Because I have a real strong feeling we're really going to need it. Shalom. Shalom.